What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again. So as Destiny coverage winds down on my channel and everybody else's channel, between now and whenever the next update or DLC rolls out, I wanted to go ahead and take a look back and figure out just what the hell happened and who killed Destiny. So now as Chris Barrett jabs tube after tube into Destiny's rotting corpse in the hope of keeping it on life support long enough for maybe a large update to come along and maybe bring back a fraction of the population, we've got to ask, how did this happen? How did it come to this? Now, it's easy for the, well, frankly, the stupid, to look at this video and claim it to be a witch hunt, but that's not the case. When looking at the postmortem of a game, it's important to understand all the forces that led to its destruction. Was it the publisher? Was it the lead designers? Was it the writers? Was it the programmers? Who does the blame ultimately fall at the feet of? This isn't a matter of a witch hunt. It really is a matter of holding people accountable. Now, a lot of people want to place the blame for Destiny's downfall on Activision. It seems reasonable. I mean, they have a track record of grinding franchises into dust, almost as effectively as EA. And then, when you look at some of the stipulations of the original contract between Bungie and Activision, like Kotaku reported back in May of 2012, well, it starts to paint a weird picture. For example, all Destiny and Comet games were to be designed to aim for a T rating. And down the line, the series was to aim for next generation of both Sony and Microsoft consoles, as well as PC. So that sounds pretty reasonable. But here's where things get weird. The contract also specifies that each Bungie employee will receive 2 Activision games per year as a gift, and that Valve, Epic, and Gearbox are strictly forbidden from developing any adaptations or conversions of any Destiny or Comet game. So if you've ever wondered why Destiny isn't on Steam, there you go. And then it has things like, before commercial release of all games in the contract, Bungie must provide Activision with a list of Easter eggs that it has spliced into the game. Activision, following the certification process, must provide Bungie with the same list. So that's just the weird stuff. But here's where things get more into the minutia of the more legal aspects of the game. Destiny will consist of a series of 4 MMO-style sci-fi fantasy action shooter titles, released every other year, beginning in fall 2013. Expansion pack-style downloadable content DLC, named Comet, will be released every other year, beginning in 2014. Destiny will feature a number of DLCs, microtransactions, and value-added paid services. Destiny is targeting a teen rating from the ESRB in the United States and a PEGI 16 rating in Europe. Activision, as previously confirmed, retains the exclusive rights to publish all Destiny titles. However, Bungie retains ownership of the Destiny intellectual property regardless of its relationship with Activision. Bungie will receive $2.5 million per year from 2010 through 2013 to develop Destiny. Bungie will receive between 20 and 35% of cumulative operating income for Destiny, depending on total amount of income. Bungie is eligible for a number of performance and sales-based bonuses depending on Destiny meeting certain development milestones and sales goals. But as we all know, Bungie renegotiated that contract because
what Bungie decided was we can't do this anymore. This is just too much. This is too hard for us to do. The tools that we work with are really hard to deal with. It's hard for us to make this much content. It's just hard making content in general.
So, what's the new contract look like? Well, apparently something like this. Of all the money made, first priority is to pay for the operation, including Activision's costs, which include marketing, trade shows, customer support staff, physical distribution, retail cost, etc., etc. This is calculated annually. Per quarter, Bungie gets a percent of the income after all costs are paid. 20% of 0 to 100 million, 24% of 101 million to 400 million, 35% of 401 million plus, rounded. So the way Bungie has positioned themselves is basically, even if Destiny 2 makes a ton of money day one, which it did, they need to keep making revenue, so they keep making money. Enter Eververse. And again, this was confirmed by Jason Schreier on the DTR podcast.
It's hard for us to make this much content. It's just hard making content in general. And they said, we are going to do a drip feed of smaller stuff, and we're going to put up the Eververse, sell microtransactions, and make money that way. And Activision said, okay. It was part of their renegotiated deal.
Now, it would certainly be easy to hear that and say, yep, there you go. Activision is to blame. But are they really? Activision has stated that they are going to spend $500 million on Destiny over the course of the franchise's life cycle. And in return for this, Bungie agreed to a ludicrous content schedule. I mean, think about it. Bungie had never built a game like Destiny before. With Halo, they created one package, a 5 to 10 hour campaign with co-op, PvP, and some additional goodies like custom games, theater mode, and Forge. But once they shipped that, their support for Halo was, what? One new map pack, maybe every 4 months with 3 maps? And as they did this, they worked on the next Halo game, which generally had a 4-year development cycle. And even then, we know that they couldn't get their shit together for Halo 2, and apparently couldn't get their shit together for Halo 3, so as Halo 2 suffered a massive reboot and Halo 3 had a ton of development troubles. This just seems like a release cycle that's absurd to adhere to. Even games like Witcher or Dragon Age or Mass Effect or Fallout or Elder Scrolls. Point being, massive RPGs are not published quickly. Even games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed that see yearly releases still have 2 to 3 years of development behind them. And even then, in the case of Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty, both games suffer greatly in terms of quality for it. Half of the Assassin's Creed games that come out are basically unplayable upon release. So even if Bungie just wanted to make a game like Halo with some RPG shooter bits sprinkled in, kinda like Destiny 2 is, they've never had a schedule so rigorous as the one that they agreed to, and no game, be it Warframe or The Division, in the looter-shooter genre has come out with a solid experience. And yet, Bungie, their lawyers, their management, all agreed to this schedule. Then again, perhaps it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. Clearly, the legal team and Bungie management all thought that this was a good deal, an obtainable one at that, or they wouldn't have agreed to it in the first place. From what we know, in early to mid 2013, most of Destiny 1 was complete. From lore to the game engine to environment and missions. We also know from reporting done by Jason Schreier and early promotional material that what we would come to know as the Dark Below and House of Wolves, and even assets like the Dreadnought from Taken King, or the EDZ, Osiris himself, and Mercury from Destiny 2, were originally part of Destiny 1, and everything seemed to be on course for the September 2013 release date. However, that's when everything kind of went off course, as the best laid plans of men and rats tend to do. See, at about this time, Joseph Staten's writing team showed a supercut of Destiny's story and mission structure to Bungie's upper management, led by Jason Jones. They felt that the story was too dense and linear, so they decided to scrap it and start over. One of the interesting things to note about this is Jones's design philosophy for Destiny was that he wanted players to have the ability to choose where they go at any time. This came into conflict with Staten's story because, as I said before, Jones thought it was too dense and linear. As a result, the entire mission progression of the game was rebuilt between mid-2013 and the game's launch in September 2014, shifting away from a structure that quickly introduced the 4 major environments, Earth, the Moon, Venus, and Mars, to a hub-based structure in which each planet would be visited sequentially with an expanding variety of missions on each. Existing missions were spliced and rearranged to fit the new paradigm, including dialogue and cinematics. Of course, what's going to be amusing to anyone and everyone who played Destiny 1 is that Destiny 1 has a paper-thin story that alludes to a much more intelligent, grandiose world. Certainly the Grimoire does, but it's never properly implemented in the game. As far as story structure, Destiny 1's mission structure was not only repetitive, go here, scan this, kill 3 waves of enemies, but it was also just a series of loosely connected events that require you to complete an objective as they appear on the map in a linear fashion. The only thing Jones's hubs did was add an imprecise and clustered way to navigate a linear story. Ironically enough, this seems to have been gotten rid of in Destiny 2 anyways, as once you finish the game, the hub locations serve as nothing more than a place to do public events. And what did we get for all that trouble? Well, Staten leaving the project, likely due to a clash of egos, because, let's be honest, nobody likes to have years and years of their hard work thrown out the fucking window by somebody who clearly doesn't know what they're doing, if the way Destiny 1 shipped is any indication. And with Staten leaving and the restructuring of the game, it required Destiny to be delayed into 2014. And with Staten's departure, the writing team he had built at Bungie for the Halo series was left leaderless. As a result, the story was written without writers. And lest we forget, Bungie decided to shit-can longtime composer and audio director Marty O'Donnell. And what led to Marty O'Donnell's termination was his belief that the deal with Activision had begun to erode the culture at Bungie. Part of it was that Activision was reluctant to release the Symphony of Spears as a standalone piece of work, and went over O'Donnell's head to replace it with their own music in the E3 2013 trailer. In the ensuing disagreement, O'Donnell came into conflict with both Activision and Bungie leadership, and was accused of unacceptable conduct on his performance review, leading to his termination. Now, thanks to Jason Schreier, we know a lot about the behind the scenes of what went on during Destiny 1's development. So certainly, yes, Activision definitely caused tension between Marty and Bungie, but that seems to be more of a product of the corporate culture at Bungie changing from what it was during Halo's development to what it became during Destiny's development. However, we have to realize that these are a bunch of adults, not children. So, any change of culture that the management staff underwent was a choice. They did it of their own accord. What Activision didn't do was throw out Joseph Staten's story, causing the lead writer to leave the company, and essentially leaving the story to be written without writers. Activision didn't cut out pieces of the game like the Dreadnought, the European Dead Zone, and Osiris's Temple on Mercury, and then served them back to the player base over the course of years as paid DLC after paid DLC, even expanding into the sequel. Activision didn't create a horrifically unusable engine that literally can take a day to make the smallest of tweaks to the game. As far as Destiny 1 is concerned, from where I'm standing, what Activision did, all Activision did, was give Bungie a lot of money and an extra year to develop a game Jason Jones decided wasn't living up to his vision. Which begs the question, Jason, where the fuck were you since 2010? Okay, fine. So, Destiny 1 was clearly a case of mismanagement on Bungie's part, and seems to have little to do with Activision. Fine, fair enough. But I mean, clearly, Activision has their blood-stained hands wrapped right around Destiny 2's neck. Right? Right? I mean, they've run plenty of franchises into the ground. Their fingerprints are clearly all over Destiny 2. It has microtransactions. I mean, come on. Well, as we know from Jason Schreier's appearance on the DTR podcast,
put up the Eververse, sell microtransactions, and make money that way. And Activision said, okay, it was part of their renegotiated deal.
As this was going on, Destiny 2 was well on its way to missing its initial 2016 release date. Destiny 2 at this time had been in development for the better part of 2 years, and was designed to take advantage of existing Destiny 1 code and systems. Think something akin to World of Warcraft expansions, or like the DLC that had come before.
We had sort of two pretty clear paths. Path A was a path where we keep taking King-style expansions going forward. Path B was ultimately the path that we chose, which was whenever a game comes out with a number on it, is an opportunity to bring people into the universe, to bring more players into the world.
You chose poorly.
During this time, however, as Destiny 2 was well on its way to its initial release, the entire management team was restructured. And like with Destiny 1, so too was Destiny 2. For reasons that we simply don't know at this time, when Luke Smith took over as lead of Destiny 2 and brought the Taken King team with him, they decided to throw out everything that was Destiny 2 and restructure the entire game. So, just like with Destiny 1, this would mean that 2 years of work would be virtually scrapped, and then cobbled together to fit their new vision. And since Destiny 1's content was no longer part of Destiny 2, any story quests or missions that took place there likely would have been cut as well, if it couldn't be repurposed. On top of that, management decided to either change or approve changes to multiple aspects of the game that would ultimately prove detrimental, such as the move to 2 primary weapons and 1 heavy weapon, meaning now that snipers, fusion rifles, and shotguns had to compete with rocket launchers. The removal of randomly rolled weapons and armor, the removal or nerfing of any weapon or armor perk that was worth having in Destiny 1, an atrocious mod system, a system that seems less like a fully fleshed out feature and more like a reaction to the backlash received when we were told that we weren't going to have randomly rolled weapons or armor anymore. The simplification of skill trees, creating a binary option where both choices are somehow bad, and yet one manages to be worse than the other. The reduction of damage to all player abilities like grenades and melee, on top of the reduction to the recharge rate of all players' abilities and supers. The removal of most Crucible game types and playlists, and limiting the Crucible playlist to 2 playlists. Creating a Crucible environment where it's nothing but team shots, lacking those hero moments, something that will only get worse with 1.1.4. Giving endgame loot to players and clans who never actually complete endgame activities. The token economy, the bad strike bosses, they made shaders into one-time consumables, the reduced vault spaces, ignoring any and all improvements introduced into Destiny after the Taken King. And the list goes on and on and on, and then, on top of all of that, there are also the many controversies centered around the cash shop. Most notably, the lack of endgame content due in large part to a lot of it being stuffed behind Eververse. And then lying to the players about the amount of EXP they earn, throttling it to incentivize core players who on average play more, thus are more invested in the game, to spend money. Why? Because
it's hard for us to make this much content. It's just hard making content in general. And they said, we are going to do a drip feed of smaller stuff, and we're going to put up the Eververse, sell microtransactions, and make money that way. And Activision said, okay. It was part of their renegotiated deal.
Now, like with Destiny 1, how exactly did Activision hurt Destiny 2? Some might argue that they didn't give Bungie enough time, and that they're the reason that microtransactions are in the game in the first place. That's a fair argument. I'm by no means here to defend Activision. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Activision is entirely innocent. They could always have given Bungie more time to make these games. Then again, Destiny 1 was in development for 5 years. Could Activision really be expected to keep paying Bungie every time they changed management or rebooted the development of a project? I merely want to try to get as close to what happened as humanly possible and who's to blame with the information available. However, that information comes with a couple of realities as well. First, Activision didn't make Bungie reboot Destiny 2 in the 11th hour, just like Activision didn't make Bungie reboot Destiny 1 in the 11th hour. However, like with Destiny 1, Activision did provide Bungie with an additional year and all the money they needed to do that. And second, Activision didn't choose the direction of many of the changes Destiny took. Now, you might argue that the very nature of making the game more casual was designed to bring more people into the game in the hopes that they will buy loot boxes, and that's likely true. However, Bungie retains all creative control over Destiny, so the scope of Destiny's microtransaction system and what it entails, what's added to it and what's not added to it, is ultimately up to Bungie, as is how much those microtransactions affect the endgame. All things considered, given Activision's usual MO of running studios into the ground, they've been downright fucking benevolent. 2 extra years across Destiny 1 and 2 for development, and all the money that entails, on top of essentially handing over 2 different studios to Bungie to help develop Destiny 2's DLC and PC ports, and the PC port of that DLC. And we haven't even talked about the Curse of Osiris, a DLC that somehow manages to have more content than the standard Destiny 1 DLCs, and yet still manages to be just as bad, if not worse in many regards, mostly due in large part to the direction of the narrative lead on the project, Christine Thompson. Recently, I had a very long conversation with one of the more prominent members of the Destiny community, and they told me they think I have a lot of really good points, but they're not the biggest fan of the way I present them, stating that they think it hurts my arguments to be as, well, we'll say provocative or colorful as I am. That doing things like calling out developers and calling them incompetent burns bridges and shuts down lines of communication with the people that can bring about the changes I want to see in Destiny. I of course see and understand and respect their point, but I disagree. For one key reason, Destiny 1. For the most part, the Destiny community was rather understanding and played nice with Bungie over the course of 3 years. Hell, before Destiny 2 was even released, any concerns that might be seen as negative was met with a violent backlash from the community at large. Everything from name-calling to rape and death threats. To say that Bungie had a core of indoctrinated fanboys would be an understatement. And yet, here we are. Even they're leaving. En masse. Nice just doesn't seem to be working. During the development of Destiny 1, Bungie said time and time again that they're not letting the fact that they built Halo, one of the most iconic gaming franchises in the world, go to their heads. But look at their actions, not at their words. There is an obvious overconfidence in what the studio believes it can do and what it can actually do. Look at the contract with Activision. This ego, this pride, seems to encompass every decision made in regards to Destiny since day one. Be it Jason Jones deciding he knows what's best for the franchise, and then single-handedly crippling Destiny 1 before it was even released. Setting in motion a set of events that would catastrophically scar the franchise for its entirety. Be it Luke Smith or Mark Noseworthy coming in and rebooting Destiny 2 in the 12th hour, like with Destiny 1, and changing many of the core features fans loved from the first game in order to either appeal to a casual audience, make game development easier, or to appeal to their own incompetencies or sensibilities. Be it Christine Thompson and her almost seeming disdain for the lore of Destiny when overseeing or writing stories for Destiny 2, and wanting to take the franchise in a more Star Trek or Guardians of the Galaxy direction that the fans clearly do not want. Now, I'm absolutely sure that there are more names that I could add to that list, but the fact of the matter is, the pride of these individuals, the ego of these individuals, has taken Destiny in a direction it may never recover from, has taken Bungie in a direction it may never recover from. Bungie was once one of the greatest development houses in gaming, but now what are they? A joke. a punchline, a meme. And, as the saying goes, pride cometh before the fall.